This video is going to give some tips for an overwritten rough draft. We'll learn how to identify that your draft is overwritten and what you can do about it. The first thing we're going to talk about is reflecting on what it means to be an overwriter, why someone might have this writing style, and how to use it to your advantage. Let's look at a checklist for overwriters. If you are an overwriter, then some of these might sound familiar. You tend to find connections between ideas very quickly and you get excited about them and want to get them all on the paper before they get away from you. Your sentences may be long and complicated. Maybe you even tend to write run-on sentences. Your rough drafts are often over the length requirement for the assignment, sometimes way over. Maybe you were assigned a 350-word essay and you gave them 1,000. You like to give a lot of descriptions, sometimes describing the same thing 3 or 4 different ways to make sure that the reader really understands it. The comments you get from those reading your rough drafts might be things like, stay on topic, or I got a little lost here, or just simply too much detail. Basically, if you're an overwriter, you tend to have too many ideas to fit neatly into the box of your particular assignment. Think about it like trying to pack a suitcase. If you have too many things to put in it, you're going to have a hard time closing it up. It doesn't mean that the things you put in your suitcase aren't valuable or interesting. They just might not all be needed for this particular trip. It is very important that you understand that being an overwriter doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. Lots and lots of great writers start with drafts that have extra details in them. They know that they're going to need to edit it down to be more focused before they turn in their final draft. They just make this part of their writing process. I'm even going to let you in on a little secret. I am an overwriter. Just about every paper I've ever written starts out with too many details. I dump way too many things into it. Some of them are unrelated. I explain things too much. I give the same description in multiple ways. And it is my job as a writer to go back and cut out what doesn't fit before I turn it in. You just have to know that your rough draft probably needs some sorting before it's ready. When you first get done with your rough draft, you can use the tools of an overwriter to go back and make sure that that suitcase closes. Just because you're an overwriter in general doesn't mean that every single paper you write will be overwritten. However, you should always check your draft to make sure that it's in good shape. Here's how to identify an overwritten paper. If the details aren't connected to the thesis statement, you've gone off topic, you're talking about something different. You repeat yourself, especially in descriptions. You tend to describe something 3 different ways when really just one of them would do. You can't figure out where to break paragraphs because everything feels connected and you've got it all jammed together. Or you have a lot of long, complicated sentences that are hard to read. These are all signs that your paper might be overwritten. And if that sounds like your paper, it's time to pull out your toolbox and start revising. Overwriters need a toolbox of approaches they can use when they revise that's going to help them get their papers focused and easier to read. The first tool that I want to talk to you about is checking your anchors. And anchors are kind of the points of your paper that help you know where you're trying to go and how you're going to get there. There are 2 big places to look for anchors in your draft. You can look for your thesis statement, which usually comes in the introduction and tells you what your entire paper is about. And for each individual paragraph, you can look for your topic sentences. And your topic sentences will help you know what you're trying to achieve in that particular paragraph. So let me show you an example. I'm going to do an anchor check for this paragraph. This is a paragraph in an opinion paper that I was writing about the best pet. I'm trying to argue that rats are the best pet, and the goal of this particular paragraph is to say that rats have a lot of the same perks as dogs with fewer downsides. So I have a clear topic sentence that makes that point. I have laid it out really clearly. I said, rats have a lot of the perks of dogs with far fewer requirements. Clear, focused, I know exactly what I'm trying to do in this paragraph. Check. However, if you take a look here, there are some details in this paragraph that do not fit. So I've highlighted here some sentences that are about cats. So cats don't have anything to do with the downsides of dogs or the upsides of rats. It's a completely different topic. I just ended up having some ideas that got in my mind and I put them in this paragraph as I was writing. They might belong somewhere else in the paper or they might need to be cut completely, but I know they don't belong in this paragraph. So I'm going to have to do something with them. What exactly I end up doing with them kind of is going to fall into one of two choices. I'm either going to have to move those sentences to a different paragraph, maybe a paragraph that already exists, or maybe I have to write a brand new paragraph for them to fit into, or I'm going to have to cut them out. So that brings us to the second big Overwriter tool. It is the delete button. This is a big tool. Look, it's never easy to cut something that you worked hard on. You put time and effort into writing it, and it might even be really smart or funny or interesting. But the bottom line is that if it doesn't fit the goals of this paper, you have to get rid of it. And so this brings us to the advice, kill your darlings. This is a quote that has been attributed to multiple famous writers over the years, but regardless of who said it first, it was probably Arthur Quiller Couch. The advice has been around for over 100 years because it's true. If you want to be a good writer, you have to be willing to kill your darlings. And that means being willing to cut something that you really like because it doesn't fit, even though it's maybe your favorite thing that you wrote in this whole paper. Don't be afraid of that delete button. If you really, really can't bring yourself to completely delete it, cut it and paste it into a different document labeled ideas for later. Maybe you'll end up pulling it into a different paper, or you'll change the topic of this paper and suddenly it'll fit. But you have to admit that kill your darlings is a lot easier to remember than cut and paste your darlings into another document you may never look at again. So just keep in mind, kill your darlings. That's an important tool for an overwriter. The final tool I want to talk about for overwriters is time. Everyone benefits from not procrastinating on their writing, but it is especially important for overwriters. If you write a draft and then you start editing it while it's still fresh and new and sitting right in front of you, you're going to have a really hard time making the kinds of cuts, rearrangements, and edits that you need to get to a strong draft. You're just too close to it. Instead, you need to be able to step away, go take a walk, relax and watch some TV, sleep on it, and then come back to it. If you give yourself time, you will have fresh eyes and be able to really think about what you need to do to make sure that you cut out the material that doesn't belong and end up with a solid, focused draft. The ultimate goal is to get in the habit of recognizing that you are an overwriter. You tend to try to pack too much into your paper, and it's going to require some work to go back through and sort and see what really belongs and what doesn't. And at the end, you want a strong, cohesive paper that really is focused on the things it needs to be focused on.